Okay. Now, the cross. At that point, he had to carry half of the cross, is a term for it. But keep in mind his condition. He was so weak and he couldn't carry it. He couldn't carry it. He tried. He tried. He was wrapped. It was tied to it like that. And so, I didn't see it in the Bible, but some people, the count is that he fell. And based upon his condition, I'm pretty sure that he did. I'm pretty sure that the account that I read is that he fell on his chest, and it bruised his heart, enlarged his heart. But that's neither here nor there. So he's led to the cross, to be nailed to the cross. Keep in mind that he wasn't nailed through the palm of his hand, because if he was nailed through the palm of his hand, then the weight of the human body couldn't support it, and it would tear apart. So he was nailed like through the wrist, because the ancients, the wrist was part of the hand, and so he was kind of nailed right here. And so keep in mind that as he was nailed in his hands, it maybe even severed some nerves. And so as a result, lightning rods of pain just shot up his arm and exploded in his brain. And it just didn't, it was a continuous thing. And he did the same thing to this arm. And keep in mind that when he was on the cross, don't forget about his back. Don't forget about his back. Don't forget about his back. Because he's on this old rugged cross. It wasn't a smooth surface. It wasn't a comfortable surface. It was a rugged, wooden, splintered surface that he was on. And so, his back, his head, at this point, you have to imagine that his whole body was just pulsating with pain all over. Just with every heartbeat, just lightning bolts of pain, boom, to the magnitude that no human has ever experienced. So they did the same thing to his feet. I'm sure the same lightning bolts of pain just shot through his whole body. So at this point, he's crucified on the cross. What typically happens on the cross, in terms of the cause of death, is suffocation. But in this case, we have to consider that Jesus' cause of death was probably a variety of causes. What happens on the cross is your body's in this position. All right? Your body's in this position. So it's hard, you can't hardly take a breath in this position. So what you have to do, you have to raise up to take a breath. All right? So you're raising up on the nailed wrist. So each time you're raising up, and on your feet you're raising up, imagine the excruciating pain, even to take a breath, to come back down. His muscles, because of dehydration, were cramping up into balls. We've had cramps before. First cramp that we get, because it hurts. But his muscle was just cramping up into a ball. And he was just unimaginable. And then it was finished. Okay? How did he look at this particular time? What was the result of all this? There's a description in the Bible. It says that in Isaiah 52, verse 14, it says that just as there were many who were appalled at him, at his appearance, it was so disfigured beyond that of any man. His form was marred beyond human likeness. It says that when it gazed upon him, it was like, ugh, what is, ugh. They were appalled to see him. It says that his form was so marred, it was so twisted, it was beyond human likeness. When he was on the cross, he did not look human. You couldn't tell what it was, who it was on the cross. It didn't look like human. He says in Psalms 22, and this is his feeling. He gives us an insight to how he felt going through this. Because we tend to think that he was indifferent. We tend to think that it was just nonchalant. Oh, I'm going to take it. No problem. But he shares his thoughts with us while he was going through it. He says, I'm poured out like water. In Psalms 22, starting with verse 14. He says, I'm poured out like water. He says, all my bones are out of joint. He says, my heart is like wax. It has melted within me. My strength is dried up, and my tongue clings to my jaw. You have brought me to the dust of death. Everything within Jesus was poured out. Every ounce of strength, every ounce of anything that he had was gone. He says, I'm poured out like water. I'm all gone. My bones are out of joint. That's why it says that his form was so marred beyond human likeness. They were all out of joint. You couldn't even tell. They were all out of joint. And this happened during this beating that he endured. My strength is dried up. He had no strength left. His heart was just melted. His heart just completely melted like wax. He was so dehydrated, his tongue just locked to his jaw. That's how I felt. He was utterly gone. Everything in him was gone. Again, he says that I gave my back to those who struck me, and my cheeks to those who plucked out my beard. I did not hide my face from the shame and spitting. Now I go back to Lamentations chapter 1, verse 12. He says that, behold and see if there is any sorrow like my sorrow. This has been brought on me, which the Lord has inflicted in the day of his fierce anger. All right. Okay, enough of the suffering. Why am I even saying this? Why am I even going to such extent to illustrate his sufferings? What's the point? What is the point of doing this? Am I doing it to sensationalize it? Am I doing it to overly dramatize it? Yeah. I want to make a point, and this is my point. In Isaiah 53, and those who have your Bibles, please turn to it. I'm going to read the NIV version. Isaiah 53, verse 5 and 6. This is why we established who Jesus was. This is why we established his willingness. This is why we established, why we illustrated the magnitude of his sufferings and his anguish. In Isaiah 53, verse 5 and 6, it says that he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. It says, all we like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. That's why. That's why he did all of those things. That's why he endured all of those sufferings I illustrated. For us. For you. For you. For you. He said, if there's any other way, let it pass me. If there's any other way for you guys to come before the Father, let it be. But there is no other way. He did it because of us. All that suffering was because of us. What shall we say? What shall we say because of all this? What shall we say? Oh, it's easy. That's in Romans chapter 5. And it actually says, what shall we say to all these things? What shall we say to all these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who does not spare his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how should he with not him freely give us all things? If Christ didn't spare his own son, if Christ didn't forego this suffering, how much more will he not give us everything that we need to live a life of holiness and godliness? Meaning that we don't need anything else to live this life. All we need to do is accept it. All we need to do is receive it.